Hello and welcome to JavaScript Marathon Training presented by This.Labs. My name is Sarah Renaud with This.Labs and I will be your host. Our next session is all about using Angular libraries in an NX Monorepo. Our trainer today is Pato Vargas, software engineer at This. Hi, Pato. Welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Feel free to reach out on Twitter using the handle shown at the bottom of the screen. If you have any questions or feedback, please don't hesitate to get in touch. JavaScript Marathon would not be possible without our sponsors. Our sponsor today is This.Labs, your partners in modern digital transformation. We specialize in mentorship, consulting, training, and staff augmentation for enterprise organizations. Find out more at this.labs.com or send us an email at hi@this.co. Do you find keeping up with the constantly evolving technologies a struggle? Do you want to bring your team up to speed on one of the latest technologies? This.Labs offers personalized training programs to suit your organizational needs, ensuring you and your company stay on the leading edge. Contact us today at hi@this.co to set up your complimentary needs assessment. We have a ton of upcoming events coming up soon. This Friday, GraphQL Madrid meetup, 12 p.m. Eastern time. Also, check out our global meetups in Angular, GraphQL, React, and Vue. More details are available at this.co, and JavaScript Marathon will be back October 28th. And with that, I'm going to hand it on over to Pato.
Awesome. Give me a second.
Yes.
Please. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Okay, perfect. So today we are going to be talking about using Angular libraries in an NX Monorepo. But first of all, thank you so much to This for making this happen. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here. And I mean, this is awesome that it's free. So thanks everyone for joining the talk. Like Sarah was mentioning, I'm a software engineer for This. I'm also a Google developer expert on Angular and a media developer expert for the company Cloudinary and a Auth0 ambassador. So now we're going to start getting into the technical side of things. And the thing that I'm going to start with is shared code. But what is shared code? Shared code is basically pieces of code that are going to be shared between your application or multiple projects and multiple apps, right? This could be like CSS, components, interfaces, services, images, and more. But there are two kinds only of shared code, and at least the ones that I know, right? So those kinds are shared code by application, and the other one is shared code between projects using libraries, right? So I'm gonna walk you through a little bit how the setup of a shared code by application looks like, right? So essentially, you will see something like this. You're gonna have a folder called shared, right? And you're gonna have components, your containers, your models, modules, and so on. Obviously, you do not have to have this set up. This is just the way I like to structure my code, but depending on the company, your teammates, your business requirements, you might have a different structure, right? But yes, this is the structure for a application where I'm gonna be having reusable code inside of that application, right? So when I talk about shared code by application, I mean, I'm gonna have code that I'm gonna be reusing in different components or different pages, right? But they only gonna be shared inside of this application. They cannot be shared outside of this application. You cannot put them somewhere else, right? So they're only intended to be used inside of the current app that you're working on. So for example, a shared code of an application could be, let's say that you're building a school application, right? For, I don't know, for a local school in your country, and they need to have a search bar. And the search bar allows you to either search for students or search for classes, right? So you might want to have a shared component of a search bar in order for you to use it between your different components, like the one for the classes lookup or the students lookup, right? But this search bar, like one more time, is only gonna be used inside of this application. Now, let's talk about libraries and monorepos. When you have code that is going to be shared between apps inside of a project, like services and components, you can do so by using Angular libraries, right? So now you might be wondering, okay, this is cool, but we're gonna get more into detail, so don't worry about it yet. So where should my libraries live? So if all developers of a company are set to work on the same main project, no matter how large, a monorepo could be a good solution. If instead developers are set to work on different projects in different teams, locations, and more importantly, code bases, you might want to build each library inside of their own repository, right? So, and by a repository, I mean like a NPM repository. So I'm just going to give you another example of when to use a monorepo and when to use the repositories by NPM, right? So for example, an example of a monorepo could be when you are working for an enterprise company and you have the HR department and the finance department and the IT department. So you have three departments. You have the HR, you have the finance, and you have the IT department, and they want to have their own application. So each department wants to have their own Angular application. Most likely, since they're under the same umbrella, the same corporation, there are going to be things that that all of them are going to need. Like they're going to have in common things that everyone wants to use, right? For example, could be a authentication service, navigation bar, assets, and CSS, just to keep the branding of the company aligned. And this could be easily done using a monorepo, right? Now, but for example, if your team is a consulting company and they want to make an application for a school and a bank, right? Well, monorepo shouldn't be your first option, since you may not want to share the code between these applications, because first of all, there are different clients and they might not have anything to do with each other. So there's no reason for you to use a monorepo. So in this scenario, you can use Angular libraries and host them in your NPM repository. The shared code between projects, right? Sharing your code in the same app is pretty quite easy. You create a component and you just inject it into the other component that is going to be using it, or the service, and so on, and just call it a day, and that's it. But if we have services or components that do not change very often, then you may want to put them inside of a library, right? So something very cool about sharing libraries between teams and projects is using NPM. But what happens if you have this library inside of your organization that you only want people inside of your organization to use, right? So you're going to be injecting the NPM package inside of the library, and all good. But then maybe someone from, I don't know, outside of the US or from a different company, they will have access to your library instead of your, because it's inside of NPM, and NPM is public. But thank Lord, NPM has a private repository, so you're free to like pay for it. So now everyone inside of your organization, under your umbrella, or anyone that you give access to, are going to be able to use your library. So anyone outside, they want. So pretty cool, right? Okay, so far so good. So now we're going to be talking about the pros of the libraries. We have to think with reusability in mind when creating the libraries, because these libraries will be used in multiple apps and projects. So what are the pros of using libraries? So one of the pros is publish and share the libraries with other teams or projects, right? Example, if you're only going to use the components one time, only one time, where should you put this library? Should you put it, if you're only gonna be using this component inside of one application, should you put this component in a library, or should you put it inside of a shared folder inside of your application? Probably a library is not the solution, because like I said, it's only gonna be used in one application. So there's no point for you to put it in a library, in a NPM registry, or whatever, right? So hopefully by this point, you already have a solid idea on when to use libraries and when to not. Now, not everything it's good with libraries, sadly, and libraries have a few cons. So some of the cons are that you have to link your library to your main project and rebuild it for every change. If not, the changes won't take place in your application. If this is distributed via NPM and built outside of your main project, you will need to keep syncing your project with the latest version of your library that you're using. If you don't do this, then your application might not be working as expected. So for example, imagine we have a library that is getting used across your organization in multiple projects, and one of your coworkers says, hey guys, I actually just found an issue with the library and authentication problem, and I'm just gonna fix it. He fixes the problem, then if you don't update to the latest version that he published, then you're not gonna see the fix, right? So that's something that you have to keep in mind. You have to be coordinating with everyone in the company, or everyone who's maintaining the library, when are new versions coming out, and so on. So now we are gonna start getting to the cooler stuff, which are the Angular monorepos. So what is a monorepo? Monorepos are a source control pattern where essentially all the code base lives in the same repository. All the projects will always use the latest version of your code. So essentially, you don't have a code version. You don't have like version 1.0 and so on. You make the change somewhere and call it a day, because everyone gets updated. So one more time, a monorepo is a source control pattern where essentially all the code base lives in the same repository. A difference of whenever you're using libraries, in an NPM registry, every single library has their own repository, right? So you can already start seeing the differences. So what are the pros of Angular monorepos? The first pro is same library version for every app, right? Which in this case I said version, but I mean, you don't really have the version, just the latest or the most updated code is what you're gonna get. Is to maintain. When you update a shared library, you update it for all the apps. Make a change, everyone sees the change, and no conflicts between versions. Building an Angular project as a monorepo containing more projects and libraries is an appealing solution, but really practically difficult to undertake for massive technology companies, right? Because you really have to have good communication between teams, letting them know, hey, buddy, I'm gonna change this library, and you're gonna see some changes in your apps. Instead of expecting, let's say, a navigation bar to be blue, now it's gonna be green. So you really have to have good communication on that. That's why I find Google really impressive, because Google uses the monorepo pattern. And I mean, Google is a massive company, and they do pretty good at coordinating when new changes are coming out, right? So, for example, whenever they are working on a new Angular version, the Angular team, and it's pretty much done, and then they build it, and it gets tested across every single application inside of Google. And you're not talking about like 1, 2, 3 applications. You're talking about like thousands of applications. Like I think like over 2,000 applications are using Angular in Google. So it only takes one application test for it to fail, and if it fails, they don't approve the changes, right? So it's actually really cool. So now be careful when using libraries. I see many teams believing that an NPM package, like having your libraries in a NPM package repository are the way to go, and that's the way they like to share code. The problem is that it creates a lot of friction for sharing the code, because every shared library needs to have their own CI/CD pipeline. Each CI/CD pipeline should handle versioning of changes, right? So, I mean, you should update from every time you make a change. You're not just going to have it in version 1.0, right? You're going to have, like, let's say 1.1, 1.2, 2.0, and so on. And every time a new change happens in a shared repo, you need to go to all the projects that are using this library and update their npm package, right? Change the version, npm install, and call it a day. And the last one is there can be mismatches with different npm package for the clients. In general, it's hard to do cross-cutting change across multiple applications and libraries, as each one of them, like I was mentioning, has their own repository, right? So it's more things to handle, more things to manage, and I mean that can give a few problems. That's the reason, like, I mean, well, no, that's not a reason, but that's one of the reasons why Google and Facebook like to use the monorepo pattern. Now, but for every problem, right, we as software engineers, we try to come up with a solution. You know, we always try to outsmart people, and you know, we are always lazy, so we always try to come up with awesome tools to make our life easier. And we have Cheddar. Cheddar is the mascot from Nrwl. That's Jeff Scroll's pet, and he's gonna be our savior because he's gonna be letting us use NX. And NX is the tool that we're gonna be talking about, right? On using Angular monorepos. NX is an awesome tool. I really like it. First of all, it's free, right? It's open source. So if you ever feel like contributing, feel free to do so. And another cool thing about NX is that it's just not a product for Angular. You can use it with React. You can use it with Next.js. And also shout out to my boy B-Man, because he made a plugin for Go to be able to be used inside of NX workspace. And overall, I want to give a shout out to the NX team. I mean, I put some pictures in there. There's a lot of people missing. So don't forget to give a shout out to them on Twitter, right, for creating this awesome tool. One thing I really like about NX is, like I was telling you, you can use NX with multiple tools like Nest.js and Angular, right? But that doesn't mean that you have to use them separately inside of your monorepo. You can actually have Angular, right? And you can have Nest inside of your same monorepo at the same time. And the cool thing about it is, as you know, Angular uses TypeScript the same as Nest.js. Nest.js is a technology used in the backend. So if you create an interface, right, you're gonna be able to use it across Angular and across Nest.js without having to create interfaces for each project. So that's actually really cool. So now we are gonna get our hands dirty, and I'm gonna get into some live coding. And in this live coding, I'm gonna show you how to convert a small application in Angular to start using libraries inside of NX. So just give me a second. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Okay. So now, okay. Hopefully you guys can see my screen. Give me a second. Gonna do some adjustments right here. Give me a second, guys. Okay. And share screen. Okay. Perfect. So hopefully you guys can see my screen right now. And as you can see, in this screen, I have a Angular application, right? And this application is inside of a NX workspace, right? And for example, the NX workspace has this folder called apps, and my app is called blog, right? You can create multiple apps inside of your NX Monorepo. We also have a shared folder for my assets. I have one for libraries, and I'm actually gonna delete this folder because we're gonna end up building it again. So you guys don't think I'm like fake news. Everything is real. So don't think I'm like cheating. And essentially, let's go to this blog application. As you can see, I have a post details, right? And this post details is just a component in Angular. It doesn't have anything crazy. Everything looks the same. I haven't changed anything, or nothing's gonna change just because I'm using NX Workspace, right? And I mean, I'm using SAS. Everything looks the same, like if you were using or creating just a regular application of Angular, right? I have my app routing, with just some tiny routing right here that calls or invokes the components that I want. And I have my app.module, which, one more time, it just looks like any other module that you may have in your applications in Angular. So the first thing that I want to do is start sharing code, right? So I'm going to start with sharing this interface in my Monorepo. So the first thing that I have to do is type NX, right, which is part of the schematics that they created, and then type G for generate, then type Nrwl, then backslash, I think that's the word, space, then leave. Oh, I misspelled that. See, that's the reason you never do light coding, because light coding always has their issues. So NX, NG, Nrwl, boom. Let's see if it gets generated. Awesome. My library has been generated. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy this interface right here, and I'm gonna copy the code and paste it into the library that I just created. And as you can see, it says lives right here. I go to my library post and the source. All these files are generated by for you by the schematics. And I'm gonna paste the code. Awesome. Now I'm gonna go to my index, and as you can see, I have my barrel right here, index.cs, and this is sharing my my post. Now, what I want to do is actually use this library, right? So the thing I have to do is go to my components that are using it, which in this case is the post details, and I'm gonna change. As you can see, it's using this interface right here. And so you guys, one more time, don't think this is fake news. I'm gonna erase this file. And of course, this file doesn't exist anymore. Now I'm gonna do the name of my workspace, which in this case is ngconf, because it's a similar talk that I gave to the ngconf Colombia. And I specify the library that I'm gonna be pulling this interface from. So we're gonna copy this line of code, and we are gonna use it in the other components that are using that interface, which in this case is gonna be this other one right here, the post page. And we inject it. So far, so good. And the services is the other one. So we save it. Cool. Now we are just gonna run it. Next serve. Let's wait for this bad boy to build, do its thing. And oh, of course, my port is already in use. Classic, right? So I'm just gonna stop it. And just one more time. Okay, now I'm gonna go to localhost 4200, and this was open actually in a different monitor. So give me a second, guys. So as you can see, now I'm using this interface, right? And this interface is shared across different components, and everything gets rendered, right? Everything is working, no fake news. So now let's jump into do something else. Now what we're gonna do is create a UI library, right? Which in this case is gonna be the following. So nxg at Nrwl Angular, and then you're gonna type live and then UI, right? And I'm gonna select SAS. And if we go down here, right, we are going to see that I have my libraries and I have a new folder called UI. So if I open the UI, I'm gonna see some generated files. I see source, I see live, and instead of live, I'm gonna have a UI module, right? That looks like any other module generated in your Angular apps. So now the next thing I have to do is it's nxg component, right? I'm gonna create a component called post, and I'm gonna do project UI exports, right? So I'm pretty much telling the library, hey, I'm gonna create this component and add it to the exports array. Let's see, I misspelled, and because it's not export, it's export. Dun, 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 dun. So as we can see, you see how it got added by us right here in this component. So that is awesome, right? That's good stuff. And what we need to do now is go to my component that I want to convert into a library, which in this case, I'm gonna go to this post page. And if you look at the HTML has just regular code, like nothing crazy. That is things that are gonna be rendering in my component. And as you can see, I'm using a router link. So we have to keep that in mind. Since I'm using router link, I'm gonna have to inject Angular router inside of my library, right? So just keep that in mind. So one more time, I copy this, we save it, and we go down here to my component that I created. And I don't know what I'm okay, post. Boom. Now I have the code. Now the next thing I have to do is go to my post component, right? And I have to what I have to do here. I'm gonna have to do put input post. I'm gonna have an array of posts, and I'm gonna be using my interface one more time, the one that I just created. So I'm just gonna like copy paste it. And if I go here, boom, right? So now we have my interface that I'm using. And then, give me a second. Okay, now what I have to do is in my application, I already have the input, right? I'm already have the interface. So far, so good. Oh, yes. Now I have to go to the UI module and I have to inject the router like I was telling you guys, right? So I'm just going to copy this line because I don't know it by heart. I should. And I have to put it in the common module. Imports, I'm sorry, next to it, and we save, right? We save this code as well. Now what I have to do, what do you think I have to do? Now I have created my library, I have my code inside of there, now I have to use it, right? So the next step, it's gonna be me injecting this library into my app.module. So how do you do that? We go to the app.module, right? And right here, we are going to inject it. And the way we do it is super, I'm sorry, it's actually quite simple. We're gonna do import UI module, right? From Angular. And then, I'm sorry, it's not Angular. I'm sorry, it's ngconf, which in this case, ngconf, remember, is my workspace name, ngconf, and it's not gonna be post, it's gonna be UI. Be careful. As you can see, this is being marked as red, right? And I'm gonna add it to the imports array as well. And you might be wondering why. I mean, my library actually exists, and this is a problem with VS Code. So I'm letting you know this so you don't like panic like I have before. So all you have to do is just literally restart VS Code, and that problem is just gonna be like fixed, just like that. So like magic. So if you want, you can call me Houdini, like the magician, because I fixed this issue. Super simple. So just give me a second. Okay, so here's my VS Code, and I open it up, dun, 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 and you see, just like that, just like magic, the issue is gone. So now we are gonna run. Oh no, I'm sorry. No, now what we have to do is actually use that component, right? The one that I created in the library. So if I go here to my post, as you can see, is using this selector, right? And now I go to this page. Now, I'm sorry, this one, and I'm gonna inject it. And then I'm gonna do post, right? Because remember that we're using the input because we're gonna pass the data. And something that I forgot before is that I need to do pass the stylings as well. So I'm gonna copy all these styles and put them inside of my library. Okay, save it. So far, so good. Now I go to my library that has my component post, and I'm just gonna paste the CSS. That's it, right? So now this should be working. Let's see if it works. If not, you guys can unfollow me on Twitter and hate me forever. Okay, so there's a problem. There's a problem here. Oh, because I misspelled it. Let's see. Okay, so now if we go back to the application that I had right here, you see it's actually working again. No problem, no fake news, it's right there. We are now sharing code. So another thing that I want to show you guys is how to create a service, right, and share this service. It's a little bit different, but almost the same. So give me a second because I just realized that my
Hey everyone. So while Pato fixes a couple things, if you want to just drop some questions for him for our Q&A, feel free
Oh,
to,
I'm
and
sorry.
we'll be back.
I'm sorry. I've been talking and I realized that I was muted. Oh my god. I've been like talking for like 5 minutes. My bad. So sorry. So let's go back in track. Sarah, can you remind me where I was left? I think it was when I was creating the service, right?
Yes.
Can
Yep.
you like help me out? Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't do much. So all I'm gonna do is show you guys how I create the service. So it was with this line of code right here that you can see on my screen. Everything good, Sarah, right now?
Yep, it looks
Hopefully.
good.
Okay, we're back on track. I'm sorry, guys. So so we're using NX, the G for generate, and we're using the S for service because I'm creating a service. I name it blog, right? As you can see. And I'm specifying the project, which in this case, the project is gonna be my library called UI, which is the one right here. I'm not gonna click enter because I forgot to, I don't know what happened with my mic, it just muted, but essentially creates a new service, which is right here, right? So one more time, I entered this line of code, the one that it was like the NXGS blog project, and then UI, and it's gonna, I'm sorry, UI, and it's gonna generate this service right here. Now, like I was telling you guys, I was pretty smart and I made the name of my service the same as the one that I had before, right? So all I had to do was copy paste the code into here, and I don't have to make any more changes. And as you can see, my code, this new service that I created in this library has already the interface that is being shared across my Monorepo. Now, what I have to do is actually use my service into the components that we're using the old service, right? So as you can see, back in the days, or back a few minutes ago, it was like this, and it's like that because I erased the original service. So what I have to do now is tell my code, hey, I want you to use the one from my UI library. So all we have to do is just copy paste this code, right? And we're gonna go to post page, which is the other one that I was using this old service. Now we want to use the service instead of my library. We save it, and let's see if this works. Hopefully I didn't break something again. Chan, 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 chan. Okay, everything looks good. Now, if I go, there you go. I'm pulling data. No problem. Everything looks good, right? No fake news. I'm refreshing. It works. Now, if I click in this, it takes me to the actual details page, which is another component that I created, right? And as I showed you at the beginning of the talk, I was showing you the routing. That's the reason I needed to inject the routing into my UI module, because I was doing the redirect. So if I go one more time, if I go to my component that I was creating inside of the library, we're using router link, right? So every time I click on a post, it's gonna redirect me to another page, and that page is gonna pull the song of this artist, right? That's one of my favorite artists. He rocks. So yeah, the last thing I want to show you guys is that how many times it has happened to you that you are in a company, in a big company, and you want to share assets, right? It's really annoying that you have to wait for the designer or for everyone to give you the image, for example. In this case, this logo that you're seeing on the screen, right? It's pretty annoying. So yeah, using the Monorepo pattern is actually really easy, right? So you are gonna just put the image in one place and call it a day, and boom, we're good to go. So I'm gonna show you how we did it. So if you go to the inside of your project, right, you're gonna see, I'm gonna close up, and you're gonna see this angular.json file. And inside of your angular.json file, there's gonna be this property called architect, and then if you look down, it's gonna say assets. And all we're gonna have to do is grab this, we're gonna paste or write that code right there. So basically what this is doing is telling your application, hey, I have a folder called Share Assets. And if we go to my list, so let's backtrack it. So I go to Lists. And then I have this folder Share Assets. And I have my two logos that I want in this Monorepo. And now anyone that creates an app, they can use it without having to import it themselves. So now you might be wondering, what is this for? So basically, what it's telling this the computer is, hey, just convert. Essentially, it's telling convert this route of share assets, convert it to assets, and then people can use it from assets instead of using share assets. You don't have to do this, but I like to do it just because it's more clean. So if we go to the post components, to the other component, which is the details component. If I go here, the page component. As you can see, it says assets, images, and then the logo that I'm using. And I'm not using the folder name called shared asset. I'm just using assets because I specified one more time in my Angular.json that this is where I want to get the assets from. So the last thing that I want to show you guys is something super simple. Let's see. So I actually created for you guys a tutorial, right? And you can find those tutorials right here. And those tutorials are on DevTO, and they're going to show you line by line, step by step, how to create your first monorepo, right, using NX, and how to start creating libraries inside of your NX monorepo. So now, like before, we were just like converting, right? Starting from already a project already set up, and then we converted components into libraries. Now in these tutorials that you see on the screen, you are gonna be able to start everything from scratch. Obviously, a good resource for learning about NX is the actual NX page, right? And so that's it. That's all I have for you guys. If you guys have any questions, feel free to show them in the chat. If not, just let me know on Twitter. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Okay. Perfect, guys. Any questions? So far, so good. I don't see anyone having questions, so I get that's good. Hopefully, it could be either good or bad, right? It could be like I was like super clear, or just people just didn't understand anything I say. So hopefully, it was that everything was like super clear. Like I said, don't worry if you cannot come up with a question right now. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. Send me a tweet, and if I do not know the answer, I might be able to find someone I know. So thank you. That is all.
Thank you, Pato, so much. Stay tuned. We are having Christina Gorton is next. So stay tuned for more JavaScript Marathon. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys.